Hi everyone, and welcome to Dyslexic Design Thinking, the bigger picture with amazing dyslexics. I'm Gil Gershoni, founder and creative director of Gershoni Creative, and I am your host for this new show, exploring how dyslexia professionals transform their dyslexia from disability to hyperability. This episode was recorded in October 2020, where I was speaking with dyslexics from different industries who uses their dyslexia to create, innovate, and lead in fresh ways. Enjoy. Welcome, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
How's it going? Great to see your faces. I would like to go around and have everybody introduce themselves and maybe in a word or a sentence tell us what is dyslexia means to you. Charlotte, let's start with you.
Yeah, hi, I'm Charlotte. I'm a choreographer, filmmaker, and dancer. I started my career at the Royal Ballet, and then I went freelance, and since then I've worked with some amazing companies like the Bayerische Staatsballet, Dutch National Ballet, Norwegian National Ballet, and more recently I've co-founded a company with Elizabeth Darifian called Move Beyond Words, which is here to amplify the voices of dyslexic artists. And I was thinking about what is dyslexia to me? And it's a very multifaceted thing. It is, to me, a Rubik's Cube where you're constantly trying to solve something and constantly shifting to try and find this combination. I feel like people are trying to strive to find this uniform pattern, but within trying to solve this Rubik's Cube, there's a beauty with the colors and the shapes. And actually, what's great is you might find something brilliant before getting to the end result. And that, to me, I think is what dyslexia is. Oh, beautiful. And I will pass this to Helen. I just remembered. I had to pass this over to Helen.
Hey, so I'm Helen Taylor. I do research on dyslexia and the evolution of this form of cognition, and I've developed some new theory from evolution from that. And so my the way I think about dyslexia is, I guess on the one hand, it feels like this huge misunderstanding of what's a really important way of thinking, and then on the other hand, this way of thinking to me is what my research shows is a specialization and exploration and discovery and invention, and it's really integral to how our species evolves. So so to me, it's a really important way of thinking that I think we need to nurture. And I pass over to James.
Oh.
Hey, James.
Hey, Gil. Thank you so much for having us, guys. I've got to say that I've done probably about 1,304 webinars since COVID began, and this is the most glamorous by a long way. And this is my favorite one, definitely. So my name's James. I'm a surgeon and I'm a scientist, and I run a research group at Imperial College in London, and we play with robots and computers and gut bacteria and a whole bunch of stuff. For me, dyslexia, I'm going to borrow a word from my 8-year-old nephew called Atticus, and he has this amazing blonde fringe, and he calls it his blurse. And it's a blurse because it looks really cool, which is good, but it's bad because everybody wants to touch it and you can't see where you're going. So it's a blessing and it's a curse. So when I was little, dyslexia was definitely a curse. It was this deeply frustrating thing. And then as I've got older, it's absolutely my biggest blessing. It's given me everything in my career. And so I've kind of learned to love it. But sadly, I don't have a blonde fringe. So that's kind of what dyslexia means to me. And I think I've got the honor of introducing Lloyd.
Oh, thank you. For me, dyslexia definitely was a huge obstacle for myself because I'm an actor, so I started off in sort of improvisation groups, and then I went off to do theatre in like the West End, and then I did a lot of television, and now I've just moved into film and just trying to create my own stuff as well on top of that. But at the beginning, it was very difficult because obviously you're reading scripts, and the way that my mind is processing the dialogue I'm completely blocked. I can't learn it this way. And it went on for ages, and it sort of brought up a lot of things. It brought up a lot of hard times and depressions and stuff like that, because I couldn't live my dream. I couldn't live what I knew, what was inside of me, and how I create and how I express myself. And it was just to do with this dyslexia, not having a way to deal with it. And so it taught me a lot about my self-discovery, and I did suddenly find ways to channel a way of learning and getting away, and then absolutely being able to accept it and grow with it. So I would say, in a word, it's an interesting one, but I would say, yeah, it takes you on a deep journey with self-discovery, and I would say it mirrors life in the way that life always throws you obstacles, and it's how you respond that is going to dictate the trajectory of where you're going. So I can't sum it up in one word, but that's what I'm trying to say. So
that was beautiful.
Can you hear me? Am I
clear? Yeah.
You heard brilliantly and very correct.
Yeah. So okay, I would sum it up and say that it's something to do with. I have analogies. Is what I use, to be honest. So I always talk about you put like a sword. To shape a sword, you got to put it in the furnace, and that's what dyslexia was for me. It was something that was painful, but that was the thing that kind of shaped my kind of strength in a way, the sword. So that's my analogy, guys. With that.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Hi, Pip. How are you?
Hi, very good.
Welcome.
I'm talking to you from my boat, so I'm hoping the sound's okay. But yeah, my name is Pip Jamieson. I'm the founder and CEO of The Dots, which Forbes called us the next LinkedIn. So I'm a tech entrepreneur. And I guess, how would I describe dyslexia? It's definitely my superpower. So 35% of entrepreneurs are dyslexic and 40% of self-made millionaires. So I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't have it. And is the sound okay? Because I sound like I'm underwater.
Well, you are, but you do sound perfect. Okay, very, great. Very jealous. It looks wonderful.
The boat hasn't sunk yet.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I always kind of try to express and think about is what would surprise you guys, what would surprise your younger self, I should say, finding, where you are today. Is there something that you would have never thought that you would have got here with all the sort of challenging that we discussed? Charlotte, would you like to start with that?
Yeah, I think at school, going to a creative arts school, I always dreamed big and dreamed about what I wanted to achieve as a career. So I feel like getting a position at the Royal Ballet quite early on was huge, and something I had no idea I was capable of, because I felt like at school you're told quite often that you're not going to achieve much because you have dyslexia. So I feel that was a huge thing that that I would hope my younger self would feel surprised by, feeling that was something that I may have not thought I could achieve.
Beautiful.
James,
go ahead.
Do you think your dyslexia affects the way you dance as well? Do you program the dance in a different maze to your other colleagues?
Oh yeah, no, 100%. I think as a choreographer, you have to put a huge amount of preparation in. There's one thing I really struggle with, especially in the studio, and that's counting time signatures. I really struggle, although I love music, and I feel many of the people that I work with are very musical. It's trying to articulate that and trying to get really complex time signatures into my body so I can teach others. But also, on the other side, as a dancer, retaining information, retaining sequences can be really challenging. And the more complex they get, the harder it is. And especially in this industry where you have to learn very, very quickly. I feel like people throw something at you and you have to have an instant response, and you can't have a 4-second delay to process it. So I think it's been a huge challenge to find strategies, not only as a choreographer, but as a dancer. And I think it's really the people that you surround yourself by and the preparation that you need to put in. So yeah, I don't know if that's quite like the answer to your question, but definitely challenges. But
I think we all get so excited about the instinctive nature of dyslexia and how fluid and how easy it is to see and to move things. But when you're trying to apply it to such a structured series of events, I can only imagine how complicated it would be. I know I would always come out at the wrong moment and then fall over. But luckily, I'm not a dancer.
No, that's so true. And I think that the worry is also having a blank moment on stage in anything, if you're an actor or a dancer or just under pressure. I feel like in those environments, your dyslexia can be heightened, especially. So yeah, I think the main thing is to try and create that environment as earlier on in the process as possible to kind of avoid any of those worries. If that makes any sense, if you're preparing for a performance, to try and get yourself in that heated environment, so that if you're under pressure and you're worried about not remembering a step, then you're sort of.
Well, you're in a kind of zone. You create this little bubble that you sit in, and suddenly, hopefully, the things arrive in your head at the right place at the right time.
Yeah, we hope. I hope.
Well, I love the idea that dancing with your dyslexia is part of the flow of it, and it's part of how you take in things and embody things. I know that, Lloyd, when you're working on some of your scripts and you sort of try to remember them, mm-hmm. You draw them, you act them until you embody that information, and you're able to sort of express your feelings and express your characters. Tell me, Lloyd, what would surprise your younger self about where you are today? Well, what would something that really stands out? You'd be like, wow, I would have never imagined I would have got here.
I think just probably, I was born in like the 80s, so we had like channels 1 to 5 growing up. And then, so the things I used to watch on the weekend, one of the jobs I got was Casualty, and that was the only thing I used to watch on the weekend with my nan. And then to probably think that I was going to end up on that show, fast forwards 30 years later, is quite remarkable in the sense that that's something I watched as a child and then was in. So I would say to my younger self would be like, yes, very kind of amazed, and actually in one way, when I think about it now, is like, yeah, when I actually say those words, you do definitely take it for granted that, when you're a kid and stuff like that, and you do have dreams and you do have these things, and then when you do them, our dreams do become so big is that we forget that actually the smaller dreams are just as important as the big things. And I probably would say that my younger self, looking back now, was all the worries and the insecurities were actually going to be transmuted into the strength and the confidence. And that is something which I don't think I would have ever imagined, maybe a teenage into my early 20s, that I was going to be able to alchemize the things that were holding me back and turn them into the things that are perpetuating me forward.
Beautiful. Helen, what would you say to your younger self?
But can I ask Lloyd a quick question? Which is,
of course.
As a dyslexic, how do you remember all the lines?
Sorry?
As a dyslexic and an actor, how do you remember all your streams and streams of lines? I find that so fascinating. In my mind, there could, all those words would just get jumbled up. I can only rely on instinct.
Yeah, well, you know what it is? I think it's a mixture of when you learn the lines, and I was like just learning the actual dialogue, and I was drawing the pictures for dialogue. That's just the line. and then it's about what's underneath the line. So if we're having a conversation and it's simply like a very simple conversation like hello, and the other person says hello, underneath that hello, is it what kind of hello are we talking about? Is it hello, I know what you've been doing, or hello, good to see you, or hello, I never want to see you again, you know? And it's the feeling and the thoughts and
the emotion.
Underneath the dialogue. And then the paradox becomes that the lines they are important, of course, but it's about what's happening underneath everything rather than what you're actually saying. So that's really what you're kind of remembering, and then the lines become secondary actually to that. So it becomes a lot easier.
So it's almost again about coming into this zone rather than learning it piecemeal, reading it through.
Yeah, it becomes about
you don't put the scripts under your pillow for osmosis.
Finding your own way, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's finding your own way to learn things. Like Charlotte, you said you can use movement sometimes to learn something, to remember something. So rather than just relying on the teachers tell you just have to learn something routes, you just have to find what works for you and how you can remember things.
Your own mechanism, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's it, yeah.
You're key to the zone.
And understand what you're learning.
This little dyslexic bubble.
Yeah, exactly. Understand what you're learning, and it's always I ask myself if I'm looking at a script is why am I saying that, and then when I know why I'm saying it, that is the sort of and the sort of thing that links together is like, here's the line and here's why I'm saying it. You see what I'm saying?
Totally. But for me, I think that's the whole thing about dyslexics. We need reason. People see us as being slightly zany and a bit off the wall, but it's not. It's the opposite. When we're taught at school science in such a ridiculously linear fashion, nothing has any meaning. As soon as you start to have to understand stuff, be it a script or be it a bit of physics or things like that, and they have a reason, then I think we can understand and process very well. But we just have such a linear little boxy education system that it breaks down when we try to use it.
That's a good point.
I think that part of the embodying the experiences, Abe, I know that you can visualize as and if I don't see everything through at the same time, I know that there is some sort of discord in it. So part of being able to embody that is how I kind of help myself control and dance and almost turn the knob on how much dyslexia do I want and how much do I want to spend versus try to regulate. And only with time and only with that experience, that is kind of, it's a tool. It's almost many lenses to dyslexia that we can bring in and out. And I think that would really surprise my younger self, where I was so disoriented so many times. Now I really love the ability to move with it. Helen, what would surprise you when that you can do today that you thought you would never be able to do?
Yeah, I think just the whole sort of trajectory things have taken would have surprised me, because when I was younger, I found writing so difficult. I still do. Like it just doesn't make sense to me to put things into words, which is not good if you're trying to be academic. But I just thought when I first found out I was dyslexic and kind of before that, I thought there was something really wrong with me. I thought I had some sort of brain damage. And so then I think I'd be surprised that this thing I thought was this huge weakness has now become my kind of obsession. And it's coming back to what Abe and Lloyd were saying about this, asking why. It's because of always asking why that's got so the why can't I? Why can't I write? Why is it so hard? But then I'm really good at figuring things out, because that doesn't. Why is this a disability? Because we have difficulty with our sort of technology, by recent technology. That doesn't make sense. So then what is this way of thinking? It's just a different way of processing information. So why does that exist, and what is that? And that's kind of what led to this new understanding, and to understand the cognitive psychology, and to understand what this way of thinking is, and to understand why it exists. So I think, and I think the other thing that I wouldn't have envisaged is that it's just led me to meet so many amazing people as well, like King Kathy and all the people in this book. You meet so many nice people working in this area. You meet so many cool people. So yeah, I think I would have been surprised they weren't taking me in all sorts of ways.
But Helen, for you particularly, it must be really strange because you work in Cambridge amongst all these very scholarly people who can write incredibly long words, and I imagine incredibly fast words. And your process is so different. So how does it feel going, working in parallel to these more traditional scholars than your more dyslexified scholarship?
I mean, that whole system feels very closed off me because dyslexic, it's pretty much impossible to get, very difficult to get funding because you're judged on how much you publish. So I actually can only do my research by working and doing it alongside work. So I have an affiliation there, but after your PhD, they don't take into account if you're dyslexic. So to me, and maybe James feels differently, that the academic system is a bit cut off dyslexic. So yes, it's a very different way of working, and yeah, it's difficult.
But very worthy, and your writings are fantastic, and your thoughts upon dyslexia and its role in the modern society is so enlightening for us fellow dyslexics to read and to start to see us being positioned as progressive, not regressive.
Yeah. Absolutely. James, what would surprise your younger self?
Well, everything. I mean, I think if I come back to, I think
awesome.
Kath and Kate were talking about Paul Smith saying majoring what you're good at, right? I did the exact opposite of that. I suppose my real gift was that I had a vocation, and I discovered that quite young, and that's really quite a significant advantage if you kind of got an idea of what you want to do, because it meant that all the pain and suffering was contributing to me going in a direction and getting somewhere and getting to a goal, and I had a sense of where that goal was, so that was quite lucky. But I kind of figured out, I guess if you'd asked me when I was 16, I kind of thought that when I was 40 and I was a doctor, that I would have it figured out. Like I would feel like an adult, like that I would understand there is a plan and I would be fully in control of it. And that each day I wouldn't wake up and go, oh my God, how am I going to get through this next series of problems? So I suppose that you can perceive that in one of two ways. I actually quite enjoy that. I enjoy the fact that every day I come into my working life and I think, oh my God, what am I going to do today? Like, what am I going to achieve? What are the possibilities? Where can we go with this? How can we create? And I feel really very privileged to be able to do that. And the other thing that I suppose is surprising to me is that some of the things that I feared most at school and I was most insecure about in school, like mathematics, physics, science, biology, are some of the things that I enjoy the most now and I take the most pleasure from. And I can find beauty and creativity and pleasure in visualizing complex data sets in mathematics that I'd never thought or imagined was really possible. And I find that really quite enjoyable. And, Helen was just talking about writing. Like, writing was clearly a barrier for me that I had to overcome. When I was a kid, I'm really not a bad artist. I'm really quite a good portrait artist. And I kind of aced all my A-level art, and it was no good to me, right? Because I was going to go to medicine. And I can see a lot of analogies now when I write as when I paint. Like when you paint, you kind of, it's like it becomes really obsessive. You paint, and you kind of focus on small components of that painting, and then slowly you get this bigger picture in your head, and you have to walk away from it. You have to come back to it. You have to maintain your perspective on it. And I now really enjoy the creative process of writing, even like writing a scientific document. I can find some inherent, this is going to sound really ridiculous, so forgive me for sounding a bit poncy, but I can see there's beauty in it. There really is, right? And I enjoy that. So when your work becomes a creative process, no matter what it is, there's real joy in it. And I suppose I'm surprised by that too. I kind of never figured that would be the case.
But when you have all your very complex data sheets and you're falling in love with the beauty, do you play with the graphical qualities of them? So are you choosing fonts and circulating colors and manipulating?
Yeah, you're so right.
Designer.
Totally obsessed over these sorts of
It's like an interesting crossover
yeah.
of data. I can't.
Yeah.
I've really struggled to read spreadsheets. I have to have them graphically manipulated, otherwise I go to sleep.
And that was interesting. So, like, when I started my scientific career, like, I found that I was pretty good at doing that, right? But most of my scientific colleagues just couldn't do that. They couldn't visualize what they were trying to say. They literally couldn't draw it out. But I could draw it out. I could take these kind of complex ideas, put them into a simple image with lots of pretty colors, and suddenly everything makes sense. So I suppose the fact that an image speaks 1,000 words to me was really my key to unlocking this whole thing, because I could do that and then I could make sense of simple things. So to come back to, like Lloyd was saying, when he's learning a script, he imagines the emotion of what's going on. I'm kind of the same. I try and visualize really what this means in real world terms. Like, what does it look like? To me, that's important. If I can translate that, then it means something.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think for dyslexic, a picture means a million words, because it's a bottomless pit of words that we see things and feel things, and be able to embody that, be able to visualize that, be able to then connect the dots, is something I think a lot of us do, and that's definitely a superpower. Pip, surprise your younger self.
Oh yeah, I mean, God, I really struggled in school, as obviously most of us did, but I managed to get myself expelled from 2 schools. So yeah, my younger self would be surprised I'm anywhere in life, to be honest. So yeah, I mean, I couldn't really read until I was about 11, and then yeah, just struggled, and that kind of, my teachers used to say I was naughty but nice, so I just was always in trouble, but I kind of did it with a smile. So they let me off until I was so naughty they'd have to kick me out. So yeah, I think my younger self would just be like, God, it's a miracle you're here. I think for me, what sort of changed is I just learned how to learn in the way that made sense for me. And funny enough, my dad was actually in the creative industries, and my way of being a rebel is I did economics and maths at university, and which is just very strange. But I was always actually really good at numbers, and I loved the patterns. And so yeah, I fast forward, and like I mean, no one even thought I'd finish GCSEs, let alone A levels. But yeah, I got a first, and it was like one of those magic moments. Except when I got a first, I emailed my dad to say, "I told you I was a genius." I misspelled genius and I spelled it Guinness. So I've still.
Is that how you spell genius? What's the difference? I think.
So my dad still has the email. He actually printed it out, and it's in our toilet at home, which says I told you Guinness. So yeah, but yeah, I think for me, the breaking point was very much, I've been very open about my dyslexia. So if you email me, on my email signature, it says delightfully dyslexic, excuse typos. And as soon as I was open with it, it felt like I was able to ask for help, or also people sort of understood why I was doing things a bit more. So yeah, I think being open with it would have been the advice I should have given my younger self.
Yeah.
And some of my clients get really bored with having to translate my mail. So I have 2 forms of communication, one which is done by my writer, which is perfect, which I use for some clients, and one which is me, which is this slightly mishmash, half, if it's complimentary, but someone might say it's poetic, otherwise just say it's illiterate. And it's that funny maze that you end up playing in between these different worlds.
Yeah, the funniest thing is one of my best mates at uni was an English lit student, and she said the best thing to me ever, which was just write like you talk. And so I'm the weirdo that sits at my computer talking to myself while I'm writing. So just because that's helped me write in a weird way. So.
But I wonder how many people across there were kicked out of school along the way of the mission to being a perfect dyslexic. Me, certainly, also 3 schools, 2 O levels, and which is before the GCSEs, no A levels. I even failed pottery twice, and I'm quite a good potter these days. And an MA much later. But I think we take this very different journey, which I think has its pluses.
But I think
kicked out of school.
Sorry to interrupt. I think there's 2 things. I think for me, the trigger was being told I couldn't do something. As soon as someone said to me, "You can't do this," I was like, "Well, okay, let's see right about that."
Bring it on.
Yeah, bring it on. I'm going to prove you wrong. And that was really motivating for me. And the other piece of advice I would give myself is like, don't be frightened of failure. Like, failure is only a problem if you don't learn from it and you don't to take the lessons. And Pip, you're spot on. Like, I had exactly the same experience. I failed chemistry A level or something, and I had to redo it. And for me, that unlocked everything. That was the moment I was like, okay, I need to learn how to learn for me. I left school. I went and worked out how my brain worked. And if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have got through med school. I honestly wouldn't be here now. So I just don't be frightened of it. If you don't try, you can't. You know, you're not failing.
I think the importance of failure is to, you know, all my early designs used to collapse. Things would explode. They would break off. They would. Luckily, no one ever got hurt. But you know, it was a route of discovery. You know, you couldn't stop until you'd pulled it so hard or tented it so much that it exploded, and then you knew you'd gone too far. Now, luckily, any clients out there, our things don't break and explode. But we had to go through that experimental period.
Yeah, and funny enough, I think that's maybe one of the reasons so many entrepreneurs are dyslexic, because, you know, entrepreneurship is basically about failing fast and learning from the mistakes and moving on. So, like, you know, every successful entrepreneur I know is the one that can persevere through the highs and lows, can get through the failures. And I guess that's why, you know, 40% of self-made millionaires are dyslexic, because we kind of had to learn failure, perseverance, all these kind of wonderful traits that kind of make us great dyslexic leaders and entrepreneurs.
I think
Absolutely. Go ahead.
I just think you're really good at finding way. You always there's always a way through. You always figure out a way to sort of get through. So, I mean, I don't fit into academia at all, but I will get my research out there, and I will continue doing this, because you'll just keep problem solving and find different ways of doing it. Yeah. So I think that's one thing about people with dyslexia, tend to be quite tenacious.
Yeah. Perseverance and tenacity.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, art.
Can I ask as well if anyone else if I this is all about positivity, of course, but there's one thing I'm not sure if everyone else shares a common thing, or if it's just human nature, or if this is a dyslexic trait, is the overthinking of things.
Yeah.
Do we have a lot of overthinkers?
100%. Yeah. I think, sorry, just to jump in there, like, I think always being critiqued at school and always preparing for like a red fail stamp on your work, it almost, I almost feel like I overthink an email. It's so silly. It's so silly, isn't it? And I constantly, I'm prepared for whoever's going to respond to come back with like red pen all over it. So I overthink. I'll go into so much detail about. I don't know if I actually. I think. Do you mean overthink everything in terms of attention to detail, or just generally overthinking? Worry, because I just jumped in on worries then.
No. I mean, I definitely. Actually, it covers. Overthinking just covers a lot of it. Yeah, if you're worrying about something, you're overthinking about that worry. If the thing that's not even to think twice about, you're still thinking about that thing. Or I'm just wondering, because as a dyslexic, I feel like the people that I know, and to Gil as well, about he does a lot of meditation, and so do I. And probably the reason for that is because I live very much in my head, so I have to come into my body. I have to come into my heart almost, live there.
That's right.
Because here you get lost in that world that is just a kind of an habitual way of thinking by overthinking things. So I just wondered if that was like a through line through us.
You can afford to overthink.
Does anyone have anything that they use to kind of dim that down, or what are their experiences through that to try and not be such a person who overthinks?
Yeah, I mean, for me, to your question about that is that it's about thinking big, and if we embrace it, then the overseeing details is part of the gift. Is we're able to then see all the nuance at the same time, and if we fight it, then it can be uncontrollably overwhelming. But I think that the gift of the dyslexia mind is that in the blink of a second, I can see 1,000 pieces of detail, and I can kind of feel when they connect and when they don't. When I used to fight that, then it's a discord because you're just spinning and you're not realizing what your mind is doing. You know, thinking big, is that something that you guys sort of play with? Is that something that you sort of embrace in that way? I see Pip, you're shaking your head. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because there's this wonderful piece of research, I think it's Harvard, but it says that we have wider peripheral vision. And so we're taking in more data all the time. And what I find really fascinating about that and working in tech is, you know, like we're all talking about the robots and the robots are coming. But, you know, humans are the most sophisticated robots that exist. We take in all this data and we synthesize it into creative thought and intuition and gut feeling. And running a tech company and seeing like those outer edges and the big picture is amazing because I can spot things that no one else does and I can see patterns and bring it into it. And so, yeah, I love it. It can be completely overwhelming. And then I take myself, I'm a massive sleeper. So the way I cope with it is I sleep like about 10 hours a night because it's almost like that's my processing time. Like I've taken in too much data. So I need to process. And then if I have that much sleep, I'm great. If I don't, I'm almost over process. I've got too much data to deal with, if that makes sense.
I find that I have a sort of slightly different problem, which is that I kind of really feel what you're saying, Lloyd. I definitely get that. But I feel like my brain is permanently switched on and is permanently churning out idea after idea after idea. Like it's just never stopping. And my problem is that they're all amazing, right? But like this one's going to cure cancer. Like, we got to do this one, and then picking the winner and really. My challenge is focusing. It's like, okay, I'm going to devote a real chunk of time and I'm going to make sure that one delivers and I'm really going to put it out. So my solution really is to try and find enablers, people who kind of get me that I don't have to be ashamed or embarrassed about, you know, being myself around, who understand that this is just how my brain works. And they can sit me down and go, James, not that one, this one. And I'm gonna just help you by perhaps giving you some of the skills that maybe you're not quite so good at to try and really deliver this so that it works. And so when I go, I just don't sleep. I just lie awake and it drives me nuts.
Now that comes back to dyslexic partnership. And I was going to say, I'm not sure about always thinking big, but I think really fast and I think obsessively and I think, as you say, all the time. And I have to occasionally have a joint just to stop. Otherwise it all gets a little bit too fast. And I need to slow down and then take a more of an objective overview. But the counterpoint is sometimes it's quite hard to keep that real concentration. And in the way as I've got older, my concentration slightly got worse. But you build teams up around you, as you say, to kind of counter-position it, which is to create kind of counterbalancing. So you can process it through. So you can throw out your ideas really, really quickly. And if I do a short talk, I talk pretty quickly. And if I do a longer talk, I talk slower. But you can change gears and move through the system. So I'm not big, but it's certainly fast.
And just to
but sleep, I don't do a lot of that.
And I'd be really interested to hear Charlotte's view on this. So for me, why I like surgery is because when I operate, I can only do one thing, and everything else stops, and my brain stops, and I only think about that one task that I'm doing, and it's almost hypnotic. And you're just in the movement, and it is like a choreography. And when you're doing that one task, it has to have your complete concentration. It's almost a relief. It's like 4 to 6 hours of just relief, and then you leave, and then you go back into the craziness. And you're dancing. I guess it must be.
It's the same.
Yeah,
it's true. But when my pots fail, no one dies. That's why I'm more nervous about surgery.
Do you listen to music surgery? Oh.
I listen to music. So I do listen to music, and well, it depends what I'm doing. It depends how much concentration I really need. If I'm really, really, really have to focus, no. But I often use it as a way to break down barriers and talk to my team. So if I don't know the people I'm working with, I make them put on the music so that we then have something to talk about and to communicate with, and that we have something in common. And then you find out a bit about who they are and what they like, and then it just breaks down those barriers. So it can be quite useful in that sense. And also sometimes when you're trying to just get the tone, it can really help. So you want people relaxed but focused, right? So you've got to pick your tunes quite well. And then, of course, there's a bit of rivalry about that.
Yeah, you can't pick something too upbeat in case you start dancing around the operating room.
With your selfie.
Yeah, no, definitely going to be quite powerful with those. Yeah.
Does one thing that I as we started today and we're starting to sort of get to the top of the hour here is that we asked ourselves, what would we surprise our younger self? Maybe as we sort of get to start to kind of wrap up is to ask, what would your older self, what kind of advice your older self will give you today? So if you can sort of put yourself into, your 9-year-old self and they would look back at you, what kind of guidance would they give you? Helen, do you want to start?
Okay. I think my 90-year-old self I'd like to think they'd tell me not to give up, and and just to find a different way forwards. Perhaps it's good not to always try and fit into how things are done if that's not working for you. And
but Helen, you'll never give up. You know that yourself.
So again,
you'll never give up. You know that yourself.
That's
so
true.
You don't need your older self advice.
So again.
So you don't really need your older self advice because you're so committed to the cause, knowing you better than that. I feel that you will pioneer and continue to push your boundaries.
Yeah. I don't know. You have days when you have a wobble and just think, "What am I doing?" But yeah, when I think about the actual research and I think about what the ideas are and I see all the evidence and I just think I can't give it up. So yeah, you're right.
Lloyd, what would you recommend? What would your older self, what kind of advice would it give you?
I think if I could really take this in at this age, it would be quite remarkable, but it was certainly something I would do with my children when I do have children. It would be to find fulfillment in just yourself, in who you are. Because you're going to have things that you love doing. You're going to, like, for instance, music or acting, whatever it is. But that's just a part of who you are. It's an amazing part of who you are, but it's just a part of who you are. So my advice would be to find the fulfillment in just you, just being you, because so much in life is about trying to be something else other than what we are. Or we're trying to, especially as a young person, especially in society today, you see it so much. It's like no one's really happy with being them, and so it's like if you could drill that into a 9-year-old, how much worth and how much value they have as a person, as just who they are, then everything else that life brings you would feel like more of a kind of bonus, more of a kind of, really be in that kind of abundant flow of it and understand it for what it was, rather than, trying to chase something that maybe you're already fulfilled and everything else is more about like it's a goal or a quest rather than like life or death. It's just can enjoy the journey more.
Beautiful. That was really moving. Charlotte, do you want to?
Yeah. I think my older self would say, like, keep discovering, keep exploring, and set your own expectations. Like, I think whether it's looking back at school and only being able to write a paragraph and staring at the page for 40 minutes, whether it's then a whole page, like setting yourself those stepping stones and knowing what your expectations are and not letting other people tell you that. So I think that makes everything feel more achievable and more manageable. And I feel like if you apply that, then you can keep going on that trajectory and kind of achieve the things you want to achieve. So I'd say, keep exploring and kind of go at your own pace.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Pip, what advice would you give yourself?
I would definitely say probably celebrate the wins more. I think part of my challenge is that I'm always going on to the next thing and the next thing, and I don't stop and sit back. I work 6 days a week, 15-hour days, and so I basically work and then sleep. And so I'd say just sometimes I need to get better at smelling the roses and going, this is great, and celebrating it, as opposed to just continually pushing myself, which is definitely positive of my dyslexia, but also can be the negative of my dyslexia as well.
Yeah, I can very much relate to that as well. Everything has moved so fast, and it's like, you know, you're kind of feeding it. You know, part of dyslexia is we try to regulate it, but if we just sort of feed it, and I think that's when we're looking into sort of solving problems everywhere they are, and it's never ending. James, what advice would you give yourself?
Well, it's kind of hard to follow because the advice you just heard is so good. I think Lloyd pretty much nailed it. I think if I was going to say one thing, it would be never be frightened to ask a question. Right? For so many years, I sat in the back of classrooms and lecture halls and the rest of it, thinking, I just don't get this, but I'm worried that if I ask, I'm going to look stupid. And now what I do when I'm teaching, or if I'm in a class or I'm in a lecture theatre, I'm always the first one to ask a question, because I know that if I ask that question and it's really silly, everyone else will be relaxed enough to ask what's really on their mind. And invariably, when you ask that question, most people in the room didn't know the answer anyway. And
that's right.
I think you should never, ever be frightened to learn. Never feel that you don't have the right to learn or that you can't learn. You absolutely can. You just need, as I think Charlotte said at the beginning, you just need to find your own way of doing it. And it's there, but just don't give up on trying to find it, because once you find it, you can unlock everything. You'll unlock key to a long and happy and interesting career and whatever it is that you choose to do.
Questions are so much more interesting than answers.
Fair, absolutely. Abe, what advice would you give? What advice your older self will give you?
I think slow down and maybe be a little bit less hedonistic at times.
I feel there's some stories there, Abe, and I want to hear them.
I think we all have stories, isn't it?
Well, one of the things we say often as we do our work is that you have to slow down to move fast. And I think that's something that we found as dyslexic, is that if we can slow down, because we think so fast, by just slowing down, we can compress a lot of thought into a small amount of time. But it does take for us to sort of kind of take a deep breath and bring it down a notch so we can see even more of the bigger picture, and almost be inside of this suspension of times and idea and be able to see how it all connects, you know?
We keep talking about these zones and bubbles, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you have anything that you do to slow down? Is there anything that you in a moment that you need to slow down, or just as a lifestyle? Is there anything that you? Because I think
my processing works a bit too fast at times. It leaves people behind, and it becomes difficult to, the communication can. My partner, who's very rigid and brilliant, not rigid, but he's very methodological, and my life partner similarly, and they get driven mad slightly by the way that I'm speeding ahead and always have conclusions before the question has been asked necessarily, and often it's not always right. So it's trying to slow down, I think, generally. To think slow.
As a person, I understand.
Yeah, the way I've managed it is obviously sleeping a lot, but Sunday's my sacred day. So I put my phone on airplane mode and I go to a wood and I plant trees. It's totally random, but that's my kind of I have to have one day a week where I do nothing.
That's good. I need that.
But for me, as I said before, it's this thing of doing pottery. I sit on the wheel and time gets suspended, and it's a very different place. But I think we're all talking about the same thing. There are ways to get into the zone, whether it's dancing or surgery, which I find more perverse, or acting or scholarliness, or inventing robots. It's this zone that we try to create, or building great brand strategy, or writing extraordinary books. But we just ourselves, and then that's when things can slow down. And when I cook, I slow down actually.
But I think just to follow on, I'm just sort of listening to you all talk. I think that when you're a dyslexic person, you don't have to be one person. Like, I don't think of myself as a surgeon at all. Like, I feel like I'm privileged and lucky enough to be able to do lots of different things. And it took me a long time to feel comfortable in that and to be confident to talk to other people about it, like to carve out your own position in the world based on the content that you have. And I think maybe that would also be another piece of advice, I think.
Actually, can I ask a question as well? Has anyone got any other neurodiversity parts of them? Because obviously a lot of time neurodiversity interlinks. So you know, I'm slightly ADHD. My brother's dyslexic and autistic. So does anyone else have any other neuro traits? No?
Yeah, I'm sure I have other traits, but I'm generally just dyslexic is what I the brand I go with, or you know, the first. I definitely have a few of the others, I'm sure. But it's all part of the spectrum, though.
Yeah. It's just like this, you know, the circles interlocking, and so yeah, it's interesting because whenever I talk to, you know, we're definitely not all the same, but sometimes the interlocking circles also have their own different crazinesses and wonderfulnesses as well. So I was just wondering if anyone else does. So, like, you know, it's
not very bad.
Yeah, it's like multicolored. No, it's interesting for me because I'm with my ADHD. I get hyper focus, so I don't get unfocused. I get hyper focus, which is bad as well. Not bad, but it's great for work. But it can be just that's all I do. So
that's interesting. I get the opposite. Yeah. I want some of that.
Well, Einstein was dyslexic, autistic, and ADHD. So I think those three are that is the like golden.
But there's no such thing as this normal. Everyone's got a bit of something somewhere. Yeah. They're just too stiff to admit it. You've got to search it out. I'm always accusing my brilliant business partner of being autistic, or in a very positive way, but in his hyper focusedness and his complete.
That's what we love about Helen's theory, is saying that society needs everyone. We need the dyslexic, the explorers, you need people who are really find detail, and you need everybody in between, and nobody's better than anybody else. We need everybody in society, and it's just the trouble that school at the moment is favouring a certain type of personality. So, yeah. I wanted to say that. Helen's theory is so beautiful. Everyone needs to feel about it.
Well, I think what we particularly need is a big book on dyslexic great people. Obviously, title pronounced wrongly in the wrong order, but we need you two. I think you two bring us all together. So buy it now, while it's still hot off the press.
Well, everybody, this was so wonderful. Thank you so much for being here and sharing this, all your thoughts and perspective. I'm sure we can keep talking for hours and hours. And because of that, hours and hours and hours. But because of that, we are having more of these salons coming up. Thank you so much for our guests, and thank you for listening to Dyslexic Design Thinking, the bigger picture with amazing dyslexics. If you liked the episode, subscribe to the series to help our content rise to the top. In future episodes, you will hear me speak with award-winning author, a celebrated British entrepreneur, and a world-famous hat designer. Dyslexic Design Thinking is a production of Gershoni Creative, created in partnership with Amazing Dyslexic.